Hello everybody, welcome to another Science with Seth video. Today, in honor of the eclipse that's going to be happening on Monday, we want to talk a little bit about what a solar eclipse is, why it happens, and some of the science behind it. Now, here in South Dakota, we won't see a full solar eclipse. We're going to see probably in Rapid City about 66%, so somewhere around that here in Hot Springs. But understanding how an eclipse happens and seeing all of this stuff does relate to some of the science we do here, and it's part of the greater understanding of our place in the universe and how the Earth works. Now, when it comes to what an eclipse is, it's essentially the same as doing a puppet show and the same as shadows. So the sun does a lot of things for us, most notably day and night cycles, and it casts light that we can then use, our eyes can use to kind of, be able to see things. So when we look at what an eclipse is, essentially what it is a celestial body, in this case the moon, casting a shadow on Earth. So when a solar eclipse happens, what we have is we have our Earth right here, and orbiting our Earth is our moon. So we've got our moon rotating around our Earth in an orbit, and in turn, Earth is orbiting around the sun. And sometimes we get an alignment where the moon comes between the sun and the Earth. So when we see the moon spinning around, when the sun comes into play, what happens with a solar eclipse, and I'll kind of do it in slow motion, is as the moon kind of moves across the surface of the Earth, you can see it's blocking out some of that solar light. So as it crosses in front of the sun, and between the sun and the Earth, we can see the shadow of the moon cast on the Earth. Now, we also see lunar eclipses, which is basically the same thing, but instead of the sun, or the moon passing between the sun and the Earth passes between the sun and the moon and casts its shadow on the moon. But what we can see is when we look at how these things happen, there are some certain things that have to come into play, and some certain things we have to remember. One, the size relationship between the Earth and the moon isn't quite the same size relationship as between a basketball and a golf ball. You also have to factor in that when we look at the orbit of the moon around the Earth, it's about 238,000 miles away from the planet. And if when we look at the sun is orbiting we're orbiting the sun from 93 million miles away. So there's a lot of distance involved. You also have to factor in the size of these bodies. So as we were talking about, the Earth itself is about 8,000 miles across diameter-wise, whereas the moon is about 2,159 miles across, and the sun is 865,370 miles across. So to give you an idea of how big that is, in the diameter of the sun, we can line up end to end 109 Earths across the surface of the sun. So when we see these orbits happening, they're not always going to happen very often. That's one of the reasons why we get very excited when we see solar eclipses, is because in order to get the orbiting bodies to line up, it doesn't happen all that often. Now, another interesting thing is we don't see the eclipse happening the same way across the planet. So if we look, for example, here in South Dakota, we're only going to see a partial eclipse. The sun's only going to get about, somewhere around 60% covered by the shadow of the moon. Whereas when we look at, further south in North America, they're going to get a full eclipse. The entire surface of the sun is going to get blocked out. Now, what's really, really cool about us seeing solar eclipses is that there are ways that we as humans can view solar eclipses safely. So one of the things, when we think about the sun is generating a lot of light. It's actually extremely dangerous to look at the sun without protection in place. You actually want to make sure, if you're going to be viewing the solar eclipse and looking at the sun during the eclipse, you want to make sure you're wearing eclipse glasses. You want to make sure that they are rated for a solar eclipse. Normal sunglasses do not provide enough protection in order for you to safely view the sun. You also want to make sure, if you're trying to look at the sun or take pictures with either a camera or look at it through a telescope, you want to make sure that you have a solar filter in place. Otherwise, you can really seriously damage your eyes. And so you want to make sure that you're viewing the solar eclipse safely. Now, if you don't have eclipse glasses or a way to view the sun safely, there is still a way you can experience and view the solar eclipse. And the way to do that is with something we call an eclipse projector. So you can make an eclipse projector at home. One of the easiest ways is actually to just use a note card, or if you have a pasta strainer or some kind of colander, you can actually use that to show it as well. And basically what you're going to do is you're going to put a tiny hole in your piece of paper or in your note card. Note cards work really well because they're really sturdy, so they won't flap around in the wind. Posture trainers work really well because they're already full of holes. But what you can do with that is that if you put the sun to your back and then place this so that way the light is shining through on a close by surface, you can actually see as the sun gets covered a little bit by the moon from our perspective, and you can actually see the eclipse kind of starting to form on there. And so you can use that as a way to see the eclipse without having to look at the sun and potentially damaging your eyes. Again, it's extremely unsafe to look at the sun without eclipse glasses because the sun is very, 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 very bright. And so with that, although we won't be able to see a full eclipse here, we actually can see part of it using some of those methods that we talked about. We're also going to, with this video, include a link to the NASA website that talks about the ways to view the eclipse safely and some different, they have a cool eclipse projector that you can build at home. But with that, I want to thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.